If you're the kind of person who gets chills just hearing a whisper in the dark, get ready. What you're about to hear isn't just another scary story, it's a supernatural account that's been passed down for generations, leaving deep marks on the memory of everyone who listens. One of those urban legends whispered around campfires or told quietly in the back alleys of a forgotten village. This story comes from a deserted road, on a pitch-black night where the silence was so thick, you could almost slice through it. They talk about a woman in white, a mysterious figure that appears and vanishes like she's made of smoke or sorrow. Some say she's a restless spirit, others claim she's just a product of fear and imagination. But what if I told you there are witnesses? People who saw her, felt her, and still live with the psychological effects of what they experienced. On this channel, we don't just tell stories. We dive into them. We dig into the details, reconstruct the scenes, and try to uncover the unsolved mysteries that haunt forests, abandoned houses, and even places you walk past every day without knowing what really happened there. What you're about to hear is more than just a testimony, it's a paranormal encounter that might just change the way you see the world around you. So take a deep breath, turn off the lights if you dare, and open your ears. Because when the mysterious presence of the woman in white appears, there isn't always time to run. This is a story of a curse, a disturbing memory, and a scream that never fades. And if you think you've heard it all, well, maybe it's time to think again. It all started with a man named Leandro, a seasoned truck driver who'd been crisscrossing the countryside for over 20 years. The kind of guy who's seen it all on the road: bizarre storms, strange hitchhikers in the middle of nowhere. But that particular night was different. He always used to say, "The road warns you when something's wrong," and that time, the warning came early. A strange silence hung in the air, the kind that even seasoned drivers can't ignore. It was a cold June night, around 3 a.m. and Leandro was driving down a lonely highway that connected two small villages deep in the heart of Minas. The road was surrounded by dense forest, the trees so thick that his headlights seemed to vanish into the blackness. He knew that route well, but that night something felt off. Like something had shifted, subtly, unnaturally. A quiet, creeping fear settled in, as if he was being watched. Before reaching the most isolated stretch, he passed by an old cemetery, nearly hidden among the trees. It was one of those abandoned places, overgrown with weeds, the tombstones cracked and forgotten. It wasn't his first time driving past it, but that night, something was different. A shiver ran down his spine, chills crawled up his back, and a heavy certainty filled him: he wasn't alone. The truck's normally noisy cabin was swallowed in an eerie, unnatural stillness. A few minutes later, deep in the forest, he spotted a white shape ahead on the shoulder. He figured it was a plastic bag, maybe a tarp blown off a truck. But as he got closer, he realized it was a figure. Still. Motionless. Dressed in white. And right there, in the middle of the road, began what he would later call the most disturbing moment of his entire life, a mysterious presence that would make him never drive that road again. Leandro said that right after passing the cemetery, everything changed. It wasn't just the cold, it was like the air had thickened, like it was hard to breathe. The truck's radio started to hiss, even though it wasn't tuned to any station. The static sounded like whispers, distant voices he couldn't make out, but they seemed to come from inside the cab. That's when he felt the first true chill, the kind that freezes you from the inside out. He thought maybe it was exhaustion. A light hallucination, maybe. But the feeling didn't go away. In fact, it intensified with every mile. The road seemed to stretch on endlessly, like he was stuck in a loop. The dashboard lights started to flicker, the headlights dimmed, and then, everything went black for 2 seconds. 2 full seconds of pure, silent panic. When the lights came back, he could have sworn he saw something in the rearview mirror, a shadow disappearing too quickly to follow. And then he saw her, a white silhouette, just ahead. Standing on the shoulder. Long black hair covering her face. A dress that swayed gently in the wind. Leandro froze. Blinked. Blinked again. It couldn't be real. But it was. And she was staring at him without moving a muscle. A female figure in white, like a ghost woman straight out of a nightmare. He swerved at the last second but couldn't stop looking in the side mirror. She was still there. Still. Unmoving. Watching. A deep, icy chill passed through his chest, like something had gone right through him. The feeling of being watched grew even stronger. And then it got worse. The cabin began to feel cold, like the AC was blasting on full. Deep down, Leandro knew this wasn't in his head. This was the beginning of something otherworldly. He tried to keep his eyes on the road, but it was impossible. The faster he drove, the more he felt her closing in. He glanced at the mirror again, and his blood ran cold. She was standing in the middle of the road, at the exact spot he had just passed. Her dress was long, torn at the bottom, and filthy. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, glowing faintly in the dim light. It was like death itself had taken form. Her face was half hidden by soaked, black hair like shed just crawled out of a river. But her eyes. That's what haunted him. Pitch black, no pupils. An empty gaze that pierced through his soul. Leandro slammed the gas pedal. The truck roared, desperate to get away. And yet the feeling of her presence didn't leave. It was like she was inside the truck now. Breathing behind him. The fear was almost unbearable. And then came the unexplainable sounds, footsteps on the roof of the cabin, as if someone was walking up there, distant screams echoing from the woods, and the most disturbing of all, the sound of a woman crying, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The lights on the dashboard flickered wildly, the radio turned on by itself, playing an old, funeral-like song. That's when he saw the impossible, the woman in white running alongside the truck, her feet never touching the ground. Leandro began praying out loud, begging for protection. His hands shook so badly, he could barely hold the wheel. Then suddenly she vanished like smoke blown into the wind. The silence returned, but it was a silence filled with tension, like the aftermath of a storm. He kept driving, tears in his eyes. The fear had rooted itself deep, like something inside him had changed forever. From that moment on, his life was never the same. After that night, Leandro never drove that same road again. He completely changed his route, even if it meant driving hours longer. His fellow truckers used to joke about it, but anytime someone brought it up, he would go quiet. No smile. No response. It was clear that something had left a deep scar, something far beyond simple fear. It was like that mysterious presence still lingered around him, even in broad daylight. As the weeks went by, he started having recurring nightmares. He dreamed of the woman standing in the middle of the road, only now, she was calling his name. Sometimes, he'd wake up drenched in sweat, still hearing her crying in his ears. He began sleeping with the lights on and avoided any route near abandoned houses or cemeteries. Even his kids noticed the once cheerful, talkative father had grown quiet and distant. He always looked uneasy, like he was expecting to see her again. Leandro sought medical help, but tests showed nothing unusual. Doctors said it was trauma or accumulated stress, typical for someone who spends a lot of time on the road. But he knew better. He could feel it, something paranormal that no test could explain. That's when the whispers started while he was wide awake. Then came the shadows in his rearview mirror, even when the truck was parked in his own garage. Fear became part of his daily life. He avoided going out alone at night and developed a strange fear of white dresses. Any woman seen from afar wearing light-colored clothes made his heart race. He said it wasn't just fear, it was like that restless spirit had taken something from him. And worst of all, he never managed to sleep peacefully again. It was as if the ghost woman was still watching, just waiting for the right moment to return. Some time later, Leandro shared his story at a gas station he frequently stopped at. The attendant, an older man with a slow drawl, listened carefully and finally said, "You saw the woman from Death Curve. You're not the first." That's when Leandro discovered that road carried an old local legend. A story filled with tragedy, unresolved mystery, and a lingering curse. Many others had seen the same figure always on a cold night, always dressed in white. According to villagers nearby, it all started decades ago with a young woman named Cecilia. They say she was abandoned at the altar, and in despair, ran into the forest and was hit by a car on that very curve. Since then, her spirit has been said to haunt the road, seeking revenge, or maybe someone who will finally hear her pain. A female entity caught between the world of the living and whatever comes after. Some say she cries for the child she never got to hold. And Leandro wasn't the only one. Other truck drivers had reported the same kind of supernatural encounter: truck lights malfunctioning, that eerie sense of being watched, and quick glimpses of a woman near their vehicles. The most terrifying part? The descriptions matched perfectly: white dress, hollow eyes, and an unbearable silence before her appearance. It was as if there was a paranormal pattern, playing out with disturbing accuracy. Some locals believe the only way to calm the spirit is to pray at the site of the accident and leave a white flower. Others prefer not to talk about it, fearing what they call the dead woman's gaze. To this day, that curve remains a tense, avoided spot few dare to drive through there after midnight. And Leandro, after hearing all of this, was sure of one thing: what he experienced wasn't a hallucination. It was part of a living legend, fed by fear and haunting memories of those who've crossed her path. Stories like this force us to face the unknown in a deeply personal and terrifying way. Deep down, we all know that there are things logic just can't explain. You can try to rationalize it. Say it was fatigue, fog, tricks of the light. But when your skin crawls for no reason, when the air suddenly feels heavy and a strange silence falls, something inside you shifts. That's exactly what Leandro felt, and that kind of feeling is impossible to ignore. The woman in white, with her empty stare and freezing presence, didn't show up just to scare. Maybe she's a spirit in pain, calling for justice, or maybe her grief was so strong that it chained her to this world. She could be an urban legend, a curse, or a collective memory from those who've driven that road and felt like they weren't alone. What's truly chilling is how often these stories align: the same figure, the same fear, the same silence. Coincidence? Or something more? Some call it superstition. Others call it trauma. But there are those who believe the apparitions continue because the story hasn't been fully told. Maybe the key lies in some forgotten detail, or in one final supernatural account that hasn't been shared. Perhaps the woman in white isn't just seeking revenge, maybe she's looking for someone who truly listens. And until that happens, she waits on deserted roads, in forests, near abandoned houses, always watching. Now it's your turn. Have you ever felt something like this? Had a paranormal experience no one could explain? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes, speaking about it is the first step toward understanding what really happened. And who knows? Your story could be the next one featured here. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another tale like this. Because believe me, what's still to come might be more real than you think.